By the way, thanks for doing this. Much appreciated.
Yeah.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of the 2014 Endurance Summit. This is Manny Aragon. I am the founder of the Rolf Workshop Center for Structural Performance. And once again, we've got another awesome speaker for you today. I've got Ben Greenfield on the line. I'm just going to go real briefly here because there's so much to list, but he's a coach, he's an author, a speaker, an ex-bodybuilder, Ironman triathlete, and he's into Spartans now and other kind of cool stuff that we're going to talk about. His science-based approach to discovering a potent balance between health and performance has revolutionized the way thousands of athletes and exercise enthusiasts around the world train, live, and eat. Ben now works with athletes, CEOs, and soccer moms from around the world to achieve amazing feats of physical endurance without destroying their body in the process. And actually, that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. Now, really quickly, Ben, you've got a new book out, and I mean, it's one of, I don't know how many books you've written at this point. What's the number? Well, congratulations, by the way, for the new book, but how many have you written?
I don't know.
Yeah, right? I don't either. It's a lot, though, right? It's maybe over 10, something like that?
I generally write a book about every 4 to 6 months or so, and I've been doing that for the past 6 years. So I don't know, probably 20, 25, something like that.
Wow. So that's awesome. That's actually quite inspiring. I have a few of your books, but the new one is kind of a bit, more what I wanted to talk about because it's kind of a culmination, it seems, of at least the things that I've read from you and listened to your podcast and kind of followed you for the last few years. But you've really been at the forefront of both sports science, nutrition, and now more recently functional medicine. In your new book, Beyond Training, you tell a great story of the tale of true triathletes. Can you tell us a little bit more about this story and its relevance not only to human performance, but also longevity and enjoyment of the aging process?
Yeah, basically I use that story as a way to compare the difference between traditional endurance training protocols specifically and a more intelligent way of training and of integrating training with a healthy lifestyle. And so what I talk about is kind of case study number one, hard-charging CEO type personality who is training with a lot of what I call in the book zone 3 training, which is generally a heart rate that's somewhere in between an aerobic threshold intensity and an intensity that's above lactic acid threshold, meaning that it's kind of sort of hard, not incredibly hard, and never quite easy enough, and not integrating a lot of the recovery protocols I talk about in the book, kind of eating a traditional, 50 to 60% carbohydrate, whole grain, starch and sugar-based diet, not really integrating a lot of the stress control protocols I talk about in the book, kind of priding themselves on being the person who, thrives on 5 to 6 hours of sleep and gets up at 4 a.m. to train. And, basically I contrast that with a woman who is, getting 8 to 9 hours of sleep a night, doing about, 20% of her training at incredibly hard intensities, high intensity interval training, about 80% in kind of an aerobic training zone, taking care of herself in terms of eating ancestrally, doing lots of bone broths and fermented foods and, meat off the bone and glycine and methionine rich proteins and kind of, really taking care of herself from that perspective and just showing what happens when you achieve amazing feats of physical performance, but go about doing so in a more ancestral manner versus just kind of like throwing your body against a brick wall every day and keeping your fingers crossed that it bounces back properly. So, ultimately, if you look at professional athletes, such as professional Ironman triathletes, they're doing great and they're fast. But my question is, how are you going to feel when you're 40 or 50 or 60 years old? How are you going to look? What is your skin quality going to be? What is your joint quality going to be? What is your overall quality of life going to be, for everything from the way that your body looks and performs to the way that your brain looks and performs to how your gut is doing in terms of its neurotransmitter production. I mean, these are all very important considerations, and you have to look at things through the lens of both health and performance. And that's really what I lay out in the book is, can we achieve equivalent levels of performance, but keep ourselves healthier in the process? And I will certainly not claim that eating a ketogenic diet or, limiting starches and sugars or carbohydrates or, perhaps tapering training from 20 to 30 hours a week to 8 to 10 hours a week is necessarily going to make you faster. But if you're just as fast and can do just as much on that style of training but stay much, much healthier, that's kind of a really nice consequence of treating yourself in a more ancestral manner.
Yeah, and that's a great summation. And I guess a question that comes up there is you said something. Well, there's a couple things. I'll just pick one, but you said something about getting faster on a ketogenic diet and having that maybe not be. Maybe I took this wrong. Is that not the way to get faster per se? Is there what is for the people who want to get faster, but also want to be as ancestral as possible to preserve longevity, to preserve their hormonal profile? So there's how do they go about doing that?
How do you get faster?
Well, without compromising, without going into type A.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I was saying was that the goal here is not necessarily to get faster, but to be able to achieve the same levels of performance while maintaining your health and longevity. Because if I were to take, say, like Ironman world champion, let's say we pull, like Chris McCormick or Craig Alexander, one of these really good Ironman athletes, and we say, okay, we're going to, instead of eating, 40 gels and, X ounces of Carbo Pro, fructose and maltodextrin during the course of the race, and instead of, thriving on, high amounts of power bars and pasta in your training, we're going to shift you more towards a higher healthy fat intake, moderated protein intake, lower carbohydrate intake with very nutrient-dense and digestible foods. They're going to feel better, and they're going to increase their longevity and anti-aging. And what I'm saying is you can maintain equivalent levels of performance. And I'm not necessarily saying that's like the breakthrough way to get faster, but it's a way to maintain just as good levels of performance, but not hurt your health or longevity. Now, if you're just trying, if you're not a pro athlete and you're kind of in the process of just trying to get faster and get to the next level, you may have a lot of room to play with. And in that case, the type of things that are going to make you faster are the things that I talk about in the training section of the book, focusing not really so much on kind of that zone 3 style training of endurance, but instead focusing on strength, power, speed, mobility, and balance, and focusing on those neglected elements of training, and realizing that based off of everything from the way that our hip extenders are built, to our cooling mechanisms, to our upright posture, our relative lack of hair and fur, which makes it easier to cool, and our ability to think and carry, opposable thumbs, everything that allows us to be able to take care of ourselves from a food and drink standpoint, humans are very, very good at endurance. Endurance is not really a limiter, but most people, when they want to go out and do something like a marathon or a 10K or a triathlon, they focus big time on the endurance rather than on the other things that human beings are notoriously weak in, like strength and power and speed. And so what happens is you not only kind of train your one strength that you're already naturally pretty good at, like human bodies can just go for long periods of time with not too much endurance training, but you also kind of dig yourself into a corner from a metabolic standpoint of developing that kind of skinny fat look because you're not focusing on things like strength and power and speed. So, ultimately the idea here is that you be able to maintain a good fertile muscular body while at the same time you're getting the endurance.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thanks for answering that, because I'm sure for a lot of people out there, this is on their mind. Well, how do I get faster and yet still not ruin myself in the process? So and I don't know if this is for you. At least since I've started following you, you've made quite a bit of a change in terms of your fueling, at least from my perspective, based on, I think, one of the first plans that I bought from you, and then now what you're talking about now. What caused that change for you from more traditional fueling to the ancestral approach, so to speak?
Well, primarily for me, what I realized was the amount of free radical formation and reactive oxygen species formation from oxidation of carbohydrates combined with high amounts of cortisol from stressful overtraining, it was really not worth it. I was fast, but, I could see when I was looking at my bloods that, it was going to be taking years off my life. And so, that's where I made the decision to try and do things to control inflammation, to control stress, and to control the amount of hours spent training. So, it's just all about, laboratory measurements. The main things you want to look at are HSCRP, very low density lipoproteins, testosterone, cortisol, DHEA, thyroid hormone. And those are a few of the biggies. Liver markers don't tell you much because athletes always have slightly elevated liver enzymes. Kidney markers generally don't get that dysregulated in athletes. Chloride and CO2 can give you a little bit of a clue of what's going on from an acid alkaline standpoint. And that's what a lot of the old Eastern Bloc countries use to identify overtraining. But when you're looking at all these labs, if you're seeing them dysregulated, typically, 9 times out of 10, what I see in an athlete is not enough intake of nutrients necessary for hormone and steroid formation, particularly lower fat diets, too much training, and not enough focus on fighting oxidation and inflammation via recovery methods. So those are some of the biggies.
So where would be a good place for people to start? Say, want to kind of not make a giant change, but maybe start with a few changes. What are some of the low-hanging fruit, so to speak?
One low-hanging fruit would be just basic recovery protocols. Not finishing up a workout and going and grabbing your shirt or blouse and your pants and getting dressed and heading back to work, but instead focusing on things like cooling the body, 5-minute icy cold shower to cool the core and shut down inflammation, using compression gear to help your veins, pump metabolic byproducts out of the legs after a workout, doing foam rolling 2 to 3 times a week, lots of soft tissue work to keep yourself from developing fascial adhesions and abnormal biomechanics and injuries due to those fascial adhesions. Keeping things like golf balls and foam rollers and little massage balls. I'm actually right now while we are talking, I'm massaging my left foot. I'm standing on like a little, it's called like a rumble roller ball, and digging into that left foot just because I had a long hike on Sunday and my foot was feeling a little bit, and I can tell it's adhesed. Most of the athletes I've worked with, they would kind of let that go. They'd walk through it, run through it, and maybe a week later develop plantar fasciitis just because they didn't go after those adhesions. So, big low-hanging fruit is recovery. Another big one is sleep. I personally have some really intensive sleep hygiene protocols I practice and talk about in the book. And, any night where I'm not getting 8 hours of sleep, I'm generally, pulling out an infrared mat and some negative ion therapy and, sleep mask, earplugs, white noise machine, and going down for 30 to 40-minute nap in the afternoon and just like maxing recovery as much as possible. And I could use that as a way to get a workout in. But I think that sometimes simply working out for the sake of working out rather than focusing on recovery is one of the things that really holds people back from achieving their goals.
Yeah, that's actually huge. And one of the things that's come up kind of over and over in the summit is self-care. So I don't think you can overstate that at all. I mean, I'm in the service industry, in terms of health and wellness and all that. So it's I see it over and over and over again. So yeah, I can't stress enough what you're saying is absolutely. I mean, it's the finer points of developing what I call an early warning system. You kind of either do them by habit, or you develop that early warning system where you take care of things before they become a big problem, because then you're out for a while and not training. So anyway,
yeah. And I mean, and those early warning systems, I mean, like I just do a basic, simple. I'm not tracking that many things. I don't do too much self quant just because it's time consuming. But I do heart rate variability at least. Like every morning, I at least track the health of my nervous system with a quick heart rate variability measurement, and that's a very good corollary to cortisol and overtraining.
And do you have a specific tool that you use for that folks out there might be able to access?
Yeah, I use one called the Sweetbeat system. It's Sweetbeat Life. You need an app, like their phone app, and you need some kind of a sensor. They have like a patch that you can wear. You can use a heart rate monitor. If you go, a lot of the gear and the tools that I talk about in the book, if you go to greenfieldfitnesssystems.com, I kind of teach you how to use them and have some stuff written down about how they work and where you get them. But greenfieldfitnesssystems.com, if you go there and you click on gear, one of the things I talk about are the heart rate variability systems that I use to measure recovery of the nervous system. Yeah,
that's real helpful. So I will include that link for listeners there, because it'd be easy. It'd be nice to just link over to that and see what you have to say in a little more detail. But so for I've noticed that I haven't seen you doing too many triathlons lately, but you've been getting more into the Spartan events. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on there? And
yeah, so I mean, like, yesterday to work out with my wife, we're both training for Spartans. We do sandbag carries and spear throws and chain drag and tire flips, and we got heavy river rocks that we've gotten from the river and we have in our backyard. So we're pretty rarely at the gym these days. We're doing a lot of, just running through the forest and doing burpees and getting dirty and practicing climbing under obstacles and over obstacles and rope climbing. And it's a lot of fun. It's a little bit different than triathlon, a lot less chronic repetitive motion. I'd have to say that my body feels a lot better. I move a lot better. I feel stronger. I'm not trying to like diss triathlon training or anything like that, because you certainly do need to be good at chronic repetitive motion and forward to back motion for a sport like that. But I've been having a lot of fun kind of tapping into some of the unique physiological and biomechanical requirements for something like Spartan training. So I've been doing a race about once a month, and I'm actually doing a podcast now about obstacle racing, and I've been enjoying it quite a bit. It's kind of a different way to train, really good cross training, and it's working out pretty well. So
would you say that is that kind of are you kind of phasing out triathlon at this point and doing more of the Spartan events because of the health benefits, or just the way it feels, or what caused that transition?
Well, I've been doing Ironman triathlon in general for 10 years, Ironman for 6 years, and over the past 5 years did 10 Ironman races. And I just wanted to do something a little bit different for a little while. And, I've done a couple of triathlons this year. I'm still swimming and biking and running. I ride my bike everywhere. I've got an old beat up pickup truck that I drive maybe once every couple of weeks. And, I commute on my bike. And I talk about this stuff in the book, how you can organically integrate a lot of this stuff into your life, So, I commute on my bike to keep myself in bike shape. Yesterday we were out of kale, actually, so I ran 2 miles to the grocery store and did some intervals coming back, carrying a bag of kale. And, basically I try and put this endurance stuff organically into my life. And I'm still swimming once a week in the river. I combine it with cold thermogenesis and hypoxia. So I've got like a swim snorkel with a restricted airflow cap on it, and I just get in the river and swim hard for a half hour. It's an icy cold river, and I breathe through this restricted airflow device and get some of the benefits of lung training and oxygen training with that hypoxia. And, so I'm still doing like triathlon style training. And if you put me on the starting line of an Ironman right now, I'd be able to do it. But I'm definitely not training as intensively as I did in the past for triathlon, just because it's hard to do that and the Spartan style racing at the same time and be good at both.
Sure. No, but it's fascinating. It seems that you've made that kind of not complete transition, because like you say, you're doing some triathlons, but it's almost more like it's become less of a, just like a hard type A kind of grind, and gone into something that, at least the way I hear you describe it, is enjoyable and just kind of more of a lifestyle that's sustainable, really, and enjoyable, relaxed, more of a natural lifestyle. So right on for doing that.
Triathlon was pretty sustainable for me. I was only training 8 hours a week when I raced Canada and I raced Kona. I was at 8 hours a week. I mean, that's how little I was training, and I was using a standing workstation and electrostimulation and all these little biohacks I talk about in the book. But ultimately, triathlon wasn't that draining or time consuming for me. It was still a commitment. Obviously, even 8 hours a week is a chunk of time, but I didn't find triathlon draining at all. In terms of the time load, it's pretty similar to what I'm doing right now for Spartan racing. The difference is just, different movements, really, just kind of something fresh and new.
Yeah, and that's huge, because things, after a while they can get boring. So again, the new book is amazing. But for those who haven't read it or want some simple tenets to live or train by, do you have any little tidbits?
I would have to say that the biggest concepts I talk about in the book is the concept of keeping yourself in a moving state throughout the entire day, so that workouts are optional, right? So that by the end of the day, I've got a pull-up bar installed in the door of my office, and I've got some heavy sandbags out in the garage that I go out and lift a few times a day. I do 5 pull-ups every time I walk underneath the pull-up bar. I do 100 jumping jacks for every hour that I happen to be sitting, if I'm ever sitting. By the end of the day, I've already kind of been just low-level working out all day long, like a hunter, gatherer, or farmer might be doing. So when you're doing that, you don't have to work out that much. I mean, you can just put some icing on the cake with some quick, high-intensity interval training at the end of the day, and you're good to go. And that's really important, because I think that a lot of people who are exercise enthusiasts and into fitness and gym junkies, they spend too much time working out and trying to negate the effects of sitting for 8 hours a day. When in fact, if you live an active lifestyle, you don't really need to do that.
Yeah, words of wisdom. That's a good one. So wonderful. So I encourage folks out there to not only follow the links down below to greenfieldfitnesssystem.com to look at the heart rate variability equipment and what Ben has to say about that, but also to check out his podcast. If you haven't listened to it, and he's got a couple now, it's amazing. He's got great guests, got really good insights on there, super awesome information. So thank you so much for coming today, Ben. I really appreciate you doing this, and people are going to benefit so much from this. That's why I wanted to have you on. Thanks again.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, Manny.
Sure thing. All the best. All right, and for you guys out there, thanks so much for coming, tuning in, and this is Manny Aragon signing out for the 2014 Endurance Summit.